We picked the absolute worst weekend to go, which ended up honestly being kind of the plan. Janelle had been sending me clips and clips for weeks now. Skinwalker Ranch stuff, night vision, thermal hits, all of it calling me to Utah. Cole, of course, didn't buy any of it, but he still loaded his shit up when we decided to make a trip out of it. We lived a few hours away in western Colorado, Grand Junction area, close enough that the Utah Basin felt within reach if we committed a few miles to somebody's car. It was holiday weekend, but the monsoon storms were keeping people out, and that was the draw. Less traffic, fewer campers, just open land and whatever decided to come out and join us. I'm sure everybody here knows the legends, and that's exactly what we were looking for. Shapeshifters, aliens, UFOs, immortal wolves, the works. The basin stretched out in every direction, the sky stacked up with dark storm clouds. Lightning flickered in the distance, mostly north, so we followed roads a little bit more south and west. Everything looked beautiful after the seasonal rains. If you haven't seen it, you gotta. We stayed clear of the ranch itself, none of us wanting to cause any problems, so we found a dirt pull-off and hiked up to this low mesa. From there, we could see a narrow runoff cutting through the basin below, fed by the storms. It was almost really like our own monsoon river and waterfall with no one else around to bother. It was a nice solid spot, open visibility, higher ground, nothing boxed in around us. It was secure and majestic, all that good stoner shit. We set up camp, smoked a couple of Colorado fatties, and wandered a bit around the edge before heading back, just as the light started to fade. And that's when Janelle stopped next to me. Hey, look at that. The ground around camp was slopped from the rain, holding clean impressions, tracks, not scattered, an obvious loop around the spot that we picked. Big deep paw prints with wide pads and long toes, each one about the size of my hand. Whatever made them had to be huge, 3-4 feet tall easily, 200 pounds. I'm completely guessing here, but these prints were insane. Cole crouched near one, studied it, and prodded it with a stick. Lion? He said. Looks more like a dog to me. I looked past the trail towards the edge of the mesa and the basin beyond. Nothing was moving, no sound but the faint water below, and rapidly disappearing sunlight. We didn't move camp, it was a little too late for that. Instead, we built the fire up like a witch's pyre and kept it fed, letting it crack and throw light as far as it could. Keeping the devils away, I said. I'll admit we were jittery for a bit, but found our groove once we started talking and smoking again. I found myself continuously looking over my shoulder, though expecting something to be looking back, and nothing ever was. We fully settled in after that, not really even talking about those tracks. Cole heated up an MRE, Janelle packed another bowl, and I kept the fire going. Between the three of us, we had enough light and noise to feel like we actually owned the space we were in. The basin stayed quiet, just the low sound of runoff moving in the wash below the mesa. Clouds drifted in and out, showing stars for a few minutes at a time before covering them back up. Every now and then, lightning flashed pretty far off, and thunder would follow 10 or 20 seconds later. The monsoon is unparalleled in terms of desert beauty. We ate, smoked, passed things around. Janelle told us a couple of stories that she'd read about the area, Cole immediately poking fun at them, but he didn't wander far from the fire. At one point, we broke out the s'mores. It felt juvenile, I know, but unless you've had them while you're baked, you don't really understand. Janelle burned her first few marshmallows, and I mean vaporizing these things, and Cole gave her shit for it. I laughed and looked over, and that's when I saw the eyes, low, just outside of the firelight. Hey, what the fuck is that? They both looked. A coyote stood at the edge of the glow. You could make out the head and the ears, the eyes reflecting back at us. It wasn't moving. Cole shook his head. No way. Janelle leaned forward a little bit, holding her stick out. Come on, she said, like it was a fucking lapdog. I picked up a s'more and held it out too. None of us were taking this seriously. It was just a little coyote. At first it didn't move, not a muscle, and then it stepped forward, slow, deceptively agile. Another step and more of it came into the light. It looked emaciated. Damn, Janelle said, that thing's starving. It continued coming closer. One more step and then its head was fully in the firelight now. Now, it wasn't just skinny. There was no body at all. The fur ended at the base of the neck, dark and wet. Nothing behind it. No shoulders, no movement that you could track. And then something shifted behind it. A hand, a wrist, knuckles. It was wrapped around the spine, holding the head up. An arm followed, slick with blood up to the elbow. The rest of him staying mostly in the dark, just enough to see that he was crouching. Janelle made a small sound. Cole didn't say anything, but I noticed his hand inching toward a solid length of wood that was near the fire pit. A man stepped in a little closer and dropped the head at the edge of the fire. It hit the dirt with a sickening plop, eyes looking at all of us, and nothing at the same time. He smiled. All we could see of him was his nearest arm and shoulder and his face. All the rest was still draped in liquid shadow. He said something in a different language, and I didn't catch a damn word of it. And then he turned, disappeared, without making any kind of sound, just nothing dramatic, just kind of gone. The fire kept popping and nobody moved. The head had stayed where it landed. We didn't really talk about it, we just kind of reacted to what we saw. All three of us scrambled, knocking into one another, kicking shit over, leaving everything where it fell. The fire seemed to fan a tower of flames behind us, illuminating every step, almost like something was, in fact, encouraging us to go. The car wasn't really that far, but it felt like forever through the darkness. Cole got there first, fumbling with the keys, swearing under his breath. The locks clicked and we piled in on top of each other, slamming doors, trying to get eyes out the window, see if whoever that was following us. And then we all froze, almost like deer getting caught in headlights. The whole reason we were down here. Locked the doors. Cole slapped a button and every door clicked around us. We sat there breathing, staring, terrified. The Blazer had supplies still, water, power bars, extra clothes. There was even a few joints tucked in the glove box, enough to get through the night. For a second we talked about leaving, just driving out and forgetting about the camp, but everything we had was still back there. Wallets, phones, packs, our valuables were back there, inside the tent or scattered now in the dirt. Cole turned on the headlights and I almost couldn't look. The beams cut across the brush, flattening everything into pale shapes and robust shadows. And there he was, just outside of the reach of the light, moving along the edge of it. It almost looked like he was pacing back and forth, that same black body paint, the same posture. He turned his head toward us and smiled. Then he did something really strange. Light on his feet, almost playful, a quick, loose few steps. This guy was dancing. And then he slipped back out of sight. We didn't open up the doors again because why would we, or how could we? And that night dragged on. We slept in short bursts, waking up to every little sound, shifting shadows, nothing we could ever point to directly. Wherever he was, he didn't come back into the light, but we were pretty sure he was still wandering the area. Some of the noises were just a little too human. Then at first light we moved, back to camp, quick as we could. Every step was a struggle. I felt like I was crossing a battlefield. I was expecting a bullet or a mortar blast to take me out at any second. The camp finally came into view, and we scanned the area, then booked it inside. A fire pit was cold. Our stuff was right where we left it. That coyote head was gone. Just a dark patch of dirt where it had been last night. I think we packed everything up in a minute, maybe two, threw everything over our shoulders, and quickly retreated back to the Blazer. None of us have been back since, and none of us fielded any interviews. There's no way we can prove it. The questions just get more and more pointed. So we decided it really ain't worth the emotions to relive it all. We asked for an experience at Skinwalker Canyon, and by God, we fucking got one. I've been camping for most of my life, but there's one trip that is still stuck with me. Spoiler alert, nothing actually happened, at least nothing I can explain. Still, it was super weird, and I haven't gotten a good answer when I shared it. I live in South Carolina, and every spring I try to get out for a solo trip at least once before the weather breaks. That year I decided to go a little further than I normally would. I followed a series of dirt roads past the usual spots, just seeing where they led me to. Eventually I ended up on a narrow track that looked like it didn't get much use. I dropped down into an area near the creek surrounded by thick woodland. It was a good setup. No other cars, no trash, no signs of anybody had been there at least recently. I parked, set up, and got a fire going. Everything was normal. But not long after I settled in, I started to get that feeling that I wasn't really alone. Nothing obvious, just a constant awareness that didn't really go away. And I know you know the feeling I'm talking about. The woods were quiet, which is what you want when you're poaching. Not completely silent, but missing that usual background noise. Every so often, I'd catch movement in the trees, just these quick shifts that disappeared as soon as I focused on them. I figured it had to be the animals or maybe just the wind. But still, that feeling stayed, that undeniable sensation of being watched. I finished my usual camp chores while the sun went down and did my best to just ignore it. I settled in the chair and tried to relax, but that feeling did not go away. If anything, it got worse once the sun really started to fade. And that's when I noticed what was missing. There's no bugs. It didn't hit me all at once, but then I noticed it. No crickets, no hum, nothing rising up with the dark like it always does. Even all the birds had gone quiet now. The whole place felt dead in the water. Paired with that feeling that I'd had all evening, like I was being watched, all of it was putting me on edge. My first thought was immediately that it was a predator, something big enough to clear everything else out. It's not uncommon for a bear or a big cat to comb through an area, and every other animal will evacuate immediately. Now, I'm not new to this, so I didn't panic. I walked back to the truck, opened the door, and pulled out my .45 from the console. I checked it, set it on the table within reach, then grabbed the 12 gauge from the back and leaned it up against the wheel well, right where I could get to it if I needed it. That made me feel a little better. This isn't a moment of pride, but as I mentioned, my intent was to poach. I know what you're saying, I know what you're thinking. It's illegal, it's shitty, but when you live out here, shooting a few squirrels and coyotes really ain't the end of the world. And I don't waste it. I keep the pelts, make stew from whatever meat I can get. Still, when you're hunting illegally, you gotta be careful and extra aware of your surroundings. I turned back towards the fire and took a step, and that's when I saw. There's a man standing behind the fire pit, far enough that the light was only catching his silhouette. I froze, and for a second I honestly thought maybe I was just seeing things. Then he raised his hand slowly, like he knew exactly what I was thinking. "Hey," he said. "Didn't mean to startle you." My pulse kicked hard, and I hadn't even heard him walk up. I hadn't heard anything, and now there was just someone speaking to me. "We're just passing through," he added, taking a careful step forward. Then two more shapes moved behind him. They came out of the trees one at a time, all dressed the same. Camouflage, chest rigs, helmets, radios clipped in. Night vision mounted up top, rifles slung tight to their bodies, not sloppy or thrown together. Everything looked calculated and professional. They were geared up like real military operators. Part of me panicked. Were they game and fish? Surely the forest rangers didn't employ RoboCop super soldiers for nighttime orbs and operations. For a few moments, I thought these guys were law enforcement and were here to royally fuck my night up. The first guy kept talking. "We're just running an overnight exercise in the area, heading back in a few hours. We're actually on the return ruck right now." I didn't say anything. I was still trying to process how long they'd been out there, and by the sounds of it, they weren't the police. "Are you Army or something?" I finally asked. "Yeah, something like that," he said, nodding toward my cooler. "Just looking for a little morale boost." "Morale boost?" I said. "Yeah, man. You got any alcohol?" It was such a normal question that I almost laughed. Was I being fucking robbed? Yeah, I said. "Beer, and I got a couple of bottles of whiskey." Honesty is the best policy when guys rolling into the camp are carrying M4s and enough ammo to sack a small town. There was a pause, and I thought about the pistol sitting on the table, just within reach. For a second, I considered grabbing it, not raising it, just having it in my hand. They were armed, up in my business, and I felt like a dumbass for having firearms, but not readily available. Before I could move, the guy's tone shifted just a hair. "Don't reach for that gun on the table." I went still. It was calm, a clear command. Out of instinct, I glanced back toward my truck. There was another one of them standing there, half in the dark, right between me and the shotgun. I hadn't even seen him move into position. He was just kind of there, flanking me, interrupting my path to my weapon. These guys were good. They'd been watching me, probably since I got here. The first guy then pulls out this thick roll of cash from his pocket and held it up. "We'll trade you 1 bottle of whiskey, 6 beers, and whatever food you're willing to part with." It was a lot of money too, more than made sense for what he was asking for. I hesitated, then nodded. All right. It was better than being robbed. I grabbed a bottle, a 6-pack, a bag of jerky, a pack of bratwurst from the cooler, and handed it over. My hands felt steady, but everything else in me was shaking like a leaf in the wind. He then passed me the cash without even counting it. "Appreciate it." Up close, they looked a lot more put together. No wasted movement, nobody talking unless they had to. One of them was still scanning the woods like the whole time, using his night vision to see everything. You guys can hang out if you want," I said, mostly out of reflex. "Use my fire to cook if you need to." He shook his head. "No, we got a few miles left. Need to be back before sunrise." "Right." He gave me a nod, shook my hand, then turned away. The others were already moving. Within a few seconds, they slipped back into the trees, heading off in the opposite direction they'd come from. And just like that, they were gone. I spent the rest of the evening wondering what they were doing and how long they'd been doing it for. Obviously, I rolled into their training when I chose my campsite, but what training was that? Military, government, private sector? Good old boys just training for the end of the world? Were they dangerous? Did they even point their guns at me, deciding if I was a target? Lots and lots of questions that night, but no answers. I finished my camping trip and didn't see any other signs of those guys. Didn't hear any machine gun fire from the woods either, just another South Carolina mystery. One thing I will tell you though, those guys just dropping into camp put the fear of God into me that night. That was the last time I ever had the intention of poaching a wild animal. We were fishing the last leg of the sweep when we heard it. 14 of us, in fact, spread out along the creek, moving steady and quiet. Water up to our calves, gear damp, just working our way through the final straps before heading back to the rendezvous. No talking, just signals. Carter stopped first, closed fist, everybody locked in place. He pointed up toward the dirt road that was running along the ridge. An engine. We shifted off the creek line and into the bank, using whatever cover we had. The truck then came through a minute later, older pickup moving slow. It passed us, then backed into a small clearing above. We stayed put and watched. One guy, mid-30s maybe, he got outstretched, then started setting up like he planned to stay a while. Chair, cooler, small fire pit. Nothing rushed, no phones, no music, just a local enjoying some nature. Carter gave us the signal to observe, so we did. Watching the locals was how we learned about Pineland. The sun kept dropping. The guy cracked a drink and sat down facing the fire. Didn't really look around much. Didn't seem too concerned about being alone out here. Haze caught my eyes. Small shrug. Solo? Maybe. Hard to say if he planned on anybody else showing up. Carter made the call. He would approach. The rest remained out of sight until he actually made contact. We moved up from the creek in this loose line. No noise beyond what we could avoid. No sudden movements. Just enough spacing for cover and flanking maneuvers. The guy didn't notice us right away. When he did, he stiffened and stood up. It was obvious. He had just turned back to his campfire when he spotted Carter. The rest of us hung back, ready for whatever this Pineline indigenous threw at us. They shared some words and 2 more operators stepped up behind Carter. Just a little visual pressure. I was busy watching the forest, more concerned with unexpected company showing up out of nowhere. We already knew this guy was armed. We just didn't know what the extent of his wrath might be. "You guys army?" I heard him ask, and a couple of us chuckled. I watched his hands. They were empty, but there was a pistol on his camping table, just a couple of feet away, and a shotgun leaning up against his truck. When I looked, though, I saw Gavani had positioned himself between the camper and the weapon. Unless this guy had something concealed, we seemed to be in the clear. This wasn't an interrogation. This wasn't part of the mission at all. This was actually a bartering attempt. Everybody in the squadron pooled their cash, just short of $500 American, and wanted to exchange it for food and alcohol. Their rations had run out 2 days prior, and now we were running on empty. No food, very little water, and sleep deprived beyond all reason. Carter continued to broker a deal. We held formation, And this guy never went for his weapon. He actually offered his campfire with us, which was very gracious. Not too many people would offer to break bread with a squad of armed military spooks in the middle of the night. Carter and the locals said goodbye and off we went. We passed through his camp when we were done and followed a trail northwest that took us up into some hills. We continued the sweep, moving 3 miles deeper into the woods. Terrain got rougher, thick brush, but it thinned out as we climbed. The ridge eventually came up gradually, then steepened. We kept pace and topped out just before sunrise. Carter called a halt. We dumped out our shit and stayed flat out on the overlook. Carter broke out the whiskey, slugged it, and then passed it. Within a few hours, we cooked the brats over a small flame, ate the jerky, and drank every drop of alcohol that camper had sold us. Never in my life have I been more grateful to be a red-blooded American than drinking that whiskey in the dark. We settled in and watched the valley. It looked back the way we came. Nothing else. Up ahead, I caught a thin line of smoke rising up from the trees. It was miles and miles in opposite direction of the original camp that we observed. I pointed it out to Hayes. He followed it and then nodded at me. Carter picked it up a second later and gave me a quick signal. We moved at first light. Game trails cut the easiest path throughout that zone, so that's what we used. Staggered spacing, same as before. On the approach, every few hundred feet, we dropped someone back for rear security and then kept pushing forward. The smoke had been steady through the morning. Whatever was out there was stationary. It took 3 miles before we saw signs of a camp. Flattened grass scraps, a path worn into the dirt. We started dropping guys back within a half mile of the camp itself. And then we heard yelling, violent, aggressive yelling. Carter slowed us down and brought us into this tight formation, and we moved that last stretch carefully, using the trees and brush to break line of sight. When we got eyes on it, the situation was pretty simple. 1 man, 1 woman, 2 kids in a small tent off to the side. The man was in the woman's face, shouting, shoving her back every time she tried to step away. Could be drunk, could just be crazy. In the moment from that distance, it was really impossible to tell though. The kids weren't even reacting, just sitting there quiet, staring out through their tent flap. Hayes leaned into me. "This isn't the mission." Nobody answered him. Carter gave a quick set of signals and we spread out, circling in. 2 peeled wide to the rear. Carter looped around the approach from the front. The rest of us held the tree line behind the man that was yelling. He had no idea that he was surrounded by 14 armed killers. We closed the distance until we were actually in position. Then Miller stepped out. "Hey," he called out, much like Carter did with the previous local. The guy spun immediately, already angry, looking for somebody else to take it out on. "The hell is it?" He stopped when he saw the chest rig, the rifle, and then the rest of us partially visible in the trees behind him. Shockingly, his anger didn't disappear, it changed shape. "This your land?" he said, trying to push back, and Miller didn't move. "Nope." "Then get the hell out of here." Miller glanced past him, just enough to acknowledge the rest of us. "We're not the only ones here," he said. "Take a look for yourself, friend." The guy did. A quick glance over his shoulder and then another one, slower. He started to understand that he was woefully outgunned. Carter brought up a hand for a little peekaboo wave. The guy turned to Miller's face, much quieter now. "What do you want?" Miller just kept it simple with him. "You're done." The guy frowned. "Done with what?" "With that," Miller said, nodding toward the woman. "This whole situation, I don't really know what your culture and customs are out here, but where I'm from, we don't beat women." There was silence for a second. The guy shifted, trying to square up again. "What the fuck are you?" Miller cut him off. "I'm not interested in parley, friend. Quit talking to me before my nice friends and I bury you out here." Nobody raised a weapon because nobody needed to. The guy looked around again, counting, his head spinning. Then he stepped back. Miller didn't waste any time. He turned slightly toward the woman. "Pack up what you need, get the kids in the vehicle and leave. Don't come back for this asshole either." She hesitated like she wasn't even sure this was real. "You're good," Miller said. "Got somewhere to go?" The kids were already moving, like they'd been waiting for some kind of opening. It was actually painful to watch, but I was grateful to have come upon him in this situation and be able to help a lending hand, the American way. A couple of us shifted positions to let them pass to the car, and one of the guys crouched and whispered, "You're doing really good. Be brave. This will be over soon." The kid didn't say anything, just nodded and kept going. They were probably just as shocked as Mom to see these army guys come out of the woods. Within a few minutes, they had what they needed, bags thrown together, essentials only. The woman didn't look at the man again. She got the kids in the vehicle, started it, and then pulled out without so much as tapping the brake pedal. We listened to the engine, paid until it was gone. And then it was just us and him. He tried to talk, start explaining. Excuses mostly, and none of it mattered to us. We weren't here to topple a regime. It started with the shitbag militants just like this guy. Carter stepped in this time. "All right, here's how this works," he said. "You're gonna listen, and you're gonna adjust, starting now." The guy nodded so hard I thought he was about to get whiplash. The rest of the morning was spent on that. We kept it within reason, and by it, I think you know what I'm talking about. I can't go into detail for legal reasons, but let's just say that he was a perfect candidate for some field training in regard to interrogation and physical limitations of the human body. Some will call it torture. In the military, we call it attitude improvement. By the time we were done, he understood what was expected of him, and he told us as much. We left him there at the edge of his own camp, quiet, cooperative, and a lot less sure of himself than he'd been an hour earlier, bleeding from his gums, his fingernails, the soft skin inside his armpits. No paperwork, no report, no one to help him get back to town. And we stepped back into that tree line and quickly moved out, our exercise continuing.